I think it's recording now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I got the notification. And so,
Okay, so we can start.
okay. So good evening, Ryan. Today we have a very interesting person on the line, and his name is Brian Fleischer. He is a former student of Stanford University and also a current student at the Yale Medical School. Yeah. Um, I'll be digging deep into his experience from Aquinas to Stanford and now Yale Medical School. And so he's a very, very interesting person. I have had the chance to speak to him several times, and a man with such an energy. Yeah. And so Brian, can you please go ahead and introduce yourself? Although I've already introduced you.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Brian. I wow, what do I even say? I am currently a medical student in training. I'm in my third year of med school. But I'm interested in so many other things outside of medicine. I guess we will get into a little bit of that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm from Ghana. I had my high school education in Ghana. As you already said, a proud student of the St. Thomas Aquinas Senior High School.
That's interesting.
And then, yeah, from Aquinas, I went to Stanford for my undergrad. After Stanford, moved back home to Ghana to work in education for a year. And then I came back from med school. And it's been like I've been in school my entire life. And I truly have been in school my entire life. And I still have more to go because after med school will be residency. And then after residency will be fellowship.
Oh, I see. That's a lot of years.
Yeah, it's like at least 6 more years after med school for me.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But the good thing is, in America, I've started to see patients even in my third year, my clinical rotations, right? And then in residency, it feels like you're working even though you're still in training.
Okay.
And so it'll get sometimes the lines between I'm in school versus I'm doing the work I really want to do becomes very blurred.
Okay.
So I'm not looking at it I'm in school for the next. It's no, I'm just living life. I'm not making the money that I hope to be making as a medical doctor yet.
Okay.
So I'm really done. But it still looks like a very rewarding journey, at least until I get there.
That's great. That's great. And so, yeah, that's very nice. And I know medical school in the US actually requires commitment. You have to be committed to it. And thank you for that commitment. Many people don't want to be committed to this, even though they want to do medicine or they want to read medicine. They are still afraid of it because of the many years that you have to commit to studying and becoming what you want to become. And so, yeah, thank you so much for being a committed person to what you want to become. And so can you share a little bit about how you got into Stanford, your journey from Aquinas to Stanford, the ups and downs, what you learned from it, how you applied, and then how you got in, how many schools you got in, if it was only one, which is Stanford too. You let us know. Yeah.
I remember, this was a long time ago.
Oh, you try to remember.
This was a long time ago.
Okay.
I guess for me, it's I actually don't like telling the story from Stanford because I feel a lot of times people want to hear that big story, right? But I feel like Stanford has been a part of a journey God has been working in my life. And so I usually like to start from somewhere that's a little bit more personal. So people can know me as me rather than me as the guy who went to Stanford or the guy who went to whatever.
Okay,
so
that's fine.
Yeah, by the grace of God, I would say I knew at a very early age kind of why I wanted to at least explore healthcare, specifically healthcare, improving health access in Ghana. I'm from a low-income family, so it's even in Ghanaian standards, we were poor. So very early on, I knew what it meant, ration things a lot of people took for granted, right? And so, God was very provident in making sure that I was provided for at every juncture of my life. But things were tough. And I think for me, that really helped build that spirit of like, while making advantage of whatever opportunities God placed into my care, because I knew how tough those were to come by, right? How I landed into a path that eventually got me to medical school was, I think this was 2010, because I think I was 13 years old. I just started Aquinas. And unfortunately, my grandfather, who I knew mostly through the stories I'd heard from my mom, he was sick. He had like leukemia. Leukemia is a cancer of the blood cell, right? So he had leukemia. So obviously, like every other person in Ghana, when things get really critical, they are transferred to one of the major institutions, right? Because that's where, in a lot of cases, the experts and the resources and the machinery you need for that level of critical care are. So he was transported to Kolebu from Takari. And that was my first time. I mean, I'd met him before, but that was one of the few times I really got to like know him. Also, for me, those were some of my first few clinical experiences. First time really being in a clinic, because as a child, like people say, I never really got malaria. I was generally healthy. So I didn't have a lot of like hospital time as a patient. Right. And so there, like, as a 13-year-old, old enough to really understand what is happening around me, old enough to get a sense of, what I may be excited about, because I was in high school, I was in Aquinas then, right? But I wouldn't say I was old enough to really grapple with the large systems that influence people's experiences of health. And so what I saw from my perspective of a 13-year-old was I was in a hospital and my grandfather was extremely sick. And like every other patient's family, they think their patient is the number one because they are. Like your father, your daughter, your mother, your pastor, like they are the focal point for you. So I was there in the hospital in this really large room. It's like there were so many other patient beds, surrounded by their families and the rest. And unfortunately, doctors were on strike then, but there were still a few doctors who were going around seeing like the critically ill. And my grandfather was there, really late stage leukemia, right? Who in any other setting would have all the attention he deserved, would, be started with the right medications. He'll be seen by many specialists, right? Just to even see a doctor to evaluate him was difficult in that situation. Do you get me? So I'll get there and I'll see my parents running around, trying to speak to who, trying to do what, trying to get attention here, family members calling in, finding out what the progress is. And I didn't understand all of that commotion because I was like, there's a doctor, we're in a hospital, he's sick, he needs the access, right? This went on for a couple of days. Eventually, I remember very clearly, one day we were on our way back home from the hospital where my mother received a phone call that he had passed away. And I think for me, that made me even more angry is the way I would describe it, frustrated. At who exactly I wasn't sure, but it was like, I felt this sort of like why? Why did this happen? Like in some case, I directed my anger at who I could see, who was a doctor, right? Like he could have saved my grandfather, he chose not to. And there were so many conversations around like moving my grandfather to a private institutions and the rest. And which is a common practice in Ghana. But the truth of the matter is that not every family can afford that luxury. You get me? Healthcare access, unfortunately, is a luxury for so many Ghanaian families. And unfortunately, in that state, that was my family. And so moving on, dealing with the grief and the loss and the rest, it left a certain imprint on me on what I wanted to do with my life, really. I knew enough about myself from my high school education to know that I would love the sciences. Do you get me? I was involved in a couple of science clubs and like obviously the science and math quiz team. High school. So I knew enough to know that, I had that level of curiosity. Do you get me? I knew enough to know I was curious and I was like driven by making some form of change within the healthcare system. I wasn't completely sure if medicine was the path for me then, but I knew enough to know that I wanted to at least be involved in the healthcare system. So moving on from like that experience, that was like, I think second year in Aquinas or first year, I think, to my final year, developing the SSs, obviously to exploring medicine. My ending up at Stanford was a very unlikely circumstance.
Okay.
You know how like sometimes you plan your life to the T, you know what every step you're supposed to make, and then you are there writing it all out, and then God is like, this, throw it away, like none of it will happen, right? So for me, it was like that. I'll get to University of Ghana Medical School, become a top scientist there and whatnot. And knowing my family's financial circumstances, there are a few things that I knew I had to get. Like, to get into University of Ghana Medical School, I needed to get my 80s, and for sure. I needed to get into like the interview. I also wanted to win the science and math quiz there because I was like, well, that's the way I can get funded. And whatnot. I always tell people I asked for 3 things that year, 2014, and none of them came. I didn't get 80s. I didn't win the science and math quiz. I didn't get into medical school. And, for a lot of young people then, like you've based all of your sense of identity and your sense of worth, in some cases, on your ability to do well in school. Right. And so for me too, similarly, I was like, I'm the person who gets the grades, right? If everything else fails me, at least my ability to reason won't. And it seemed like this was really challenged in that period, where it was like the top 3 things that, to be honest, a lot of people expected me to get. I didn't get. I felt disappointed at myself. I was disappointed in God. I was like, but God knew exactly what he was doing. It's what I've come to understand. Because, and this is not to say, like, the University of Ghana Medical School is not great. If it wasn't great, I wouldn't have wanted to go there. Do you get me? But that was not what God's plan was for me. So whilst I was in the University of Ghana at Aquinas, my assistant headmaster, Reverend Father Benjamin Ohene, who I always will mention his name, has been such a crucial mentor in my life. There was this organization called AFEX that came to Aquinas. By then, Aquinas were the reigning champions on the science and math quiz. So I think AFEX wanted to sponsor some of the boys then. Reverend Father selected me. So I benefited from the SET program. Eventually wrote the SET with them. And that's how come I got to learn about the SET in general. But God being so good, I also learned about other resources to support what I was doing at AFEX, which is what I always tell people, right? Like there's so many, there's available resources. Don't just rely on one thing. Do you get me? So I also utilized the university, the US Embassy Education USA, Auntie Benes, and at time Auntie Ethel, Auntie Shakira. Those people became like God sent angels in my path. They really invested in my application success as well. And I applied to Stanford. And a couple of other schools. God being so good, I got into most of them. I think I applied to 6 or 7, and I got rejected from like 1 or 2. And the rest, I was able to get with good financial aid. So that was how come I ended up coming to the US. It was not my plan in the beginning, I'll tell you. I did not know about it. I knew a little bit about the SAT because by then, my final year in Aquinas, I'd already been to AFEX and I'd taken the SAT once and I hadn't done well. So I knew that, okay, but even then, I would say like, because I hadn't done well on the SAT, my focus was like, forget America, let me focus on the WASI. So when the WASI really didn't work out, right, then I was like, okay, now I need to take the SAT.
Very serious.
Mr. Yeboah at AFEX will challenge you. If there's one thing I really appreciate Mr. Yeboah for is Mr. Yeboah will challenge you. Mr. Yeboah will call out your bluff. You say, if you think you are good, get the score. And he threw me a challenge. I remember very much. He was like, Brian, if you want me to do Stanford, give me this specific SAT score. And God being so good, that was exactly what I got. So I applied to Stanford, and there's so many reasons why I ended up choosing Stanford. That could be something I answer later. I've been talking for too long, so I just want to
No, go into it. Go into it. You could actually mention some of the schools you got into if you want to, and that was help.
So when I was applying, around that time, like I wanted to maximize my chances, right? So I think I primarily applied to liberal arts colleges because I was like, I love the small college setting where every professor knows my name. And the rest. I think the only big schools I applied to were like Stanford, Cornell, Vanderbilt. It's not a decision I regret because honestly, I feel like if I went up and down, Stanford is where God wanted me to be. And so that's why I ended up anyway. But when I applied to them, Stanford was like a late addition. It was more of like Now I'm a little bit more confident in myself. I'm like, okay, let me go for code, right? I think part of the reasons why I eventually chose Stanford were because of the mentors I knew there, or people I had read about there.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm grateful for is like at every stage in my life, there are people in my life who are a few steps ahead of me, like that I can immediately look up to. And a lot of times I reach out to them. So one of them was Lucio Derry. I remember so well when I was in Aquinas, when Lucio won there, was he third best candidate? And he had already been like second best in the Brilla and the rest. So it's like, he definitely looked like someone that I wanted to get to know. And the rest, I eventually got to know him through Education USA. He was crucial in helping me edit my essays and the rest. But like, and one of the things I also tell some of my mentees is that like, you don't just pick one person and latch onto them.
Yeah.
Like you have to find a cohort of mentors, right? And like a lot of these people, you want to develop relationships with them so they can feel invested in your journey.
Definitely.
A lot of people will just message me on Instagram and the first thing they want me to do is to edit their essay. And they will ask me to edit their essay 3 days before the tape. No good morning. I'm like, no,
nothing.
That is not how you build a relationship with somebody.
Definitely.
It sounds like you're trying to use me. A lot of times, sometimes I'm like, this is somebody who really needs my help. Let me help. But a few times I'm like, no, I don't want to help you. I have no obligation to. Do you understand? I'm busy. I can't drop everything I have simply to attend to you. So that's an advice I give people. With Lucio, it was a lot of intentionality, reaching out to him, getting time to for him to also get to know me, feeling like, we're doing this together, right? There were other people like Kojo Rai. Remember, Kojo had started this organization called Change 100. I was doing a lot of youth-driven social impact in Ghana that I really looked up to. So I was like, okay, if Kojo ended up going to Stanford, if Lucio ended up going to Stanford, and that means Stanford must be a good choice.
A good choice.
Into the school, I realized that, that culture of innovation meets entrepreneurship, meets 21st century, groundbreaking research, meets community was all in this school. And I applied. God being so good, I got in. I also I think I got into Cornell. Cornell was also another school I really liked.
Okay, that's nice. I never knew of this.
Yeah, I really like Cornell too.
Yeah.
By then I was interested in bioengineering, and Cornell is one of the best engineering schools in the world.
Yeah.
I really wanted to go there. I did not get into Vanderbilt.
Oh.
I'm so salty. I did not get into Vanderbilt. And then the liberal arts, I think I went to Armhest.
Armhest, yeah.
Mona, bro, this is 2014, how many years? 8 years ago.
It's 8 years now, I think.
Yeah, 8 years ago. Hey, you should grow, no?
Yeah.
God is faithful.
God is faithful.
So all of those came one after the other. I think Stanford was also an easy choice because Stanford and Cornell gave me the most money. But because at that point, I really loved Stanford, I just went for sure. I chose Stanford.
Yeah. All right, that's great. And so now that you are able to give us a very interesting overview of your journey to IFEX, and then from IFEX to Stanford, the people who were very who contributed to this and all that. Can you also tell us about the time in Stanford, the ups and downs, why you selected a pre-med degree, or why you did pre-med or something like that? Where was there a time that you wanted to choose a different thing? Did people discourage you from doing what you wanted to do? Because I know a lot of people, when it comes to the US, they'll be like, medicine in the US is very tedious to do. It's a lot of years that you have to commit to it. A lot of things going to happen. I want you to tell us, did people put that kind of fear into you, and how did you overcome that fear?
Okay. Again, like I said, I came into the US knowing I wanted to do something in healthcare.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
At that point in time, to be very honest, I kind of always knew medicine was on the plate for me. Okay. One, since I was born, my mother always called me doctor. So I thought, let's forget about parental influence, right?
Yeah.
But it's also a thing of as a Christian, also sometimes listening to what God's plan is for you. And for me, very early on, I knew that that was something that I desired. And that was something that I kind of felt was God leading me, right? Yeah. But even aside that, let's talk more about the tangibles, because sometimes that could be a little bit more spiritual, right?
Yeah.
I think with the tangibles for me, when I came to Stanford, the ups and downs started from day one. The ups and downs started from day one. It was a challenging place. Good challenge. I always tell students, if you go to a school and like it doesn't challenge you, you're in the wrong place.
Yeah.
You get me? Because that's the whole point of a university, right?
Yeah.
To be in a place where you're out of your comfort zone so you can grow. Stanford was extremely challenging. I remember I always tell this as a funny thing, my first midterm, this was like chemistry 31A, so like general chemistry. And then we wrote the exam and Brian was expecting to be number 3. I was like, maybe somebody, the best in India will be number 1, the best in China will be number 2. I will be number 3. Bro. I remember seeing the exam results.
My God.
See, I just see the moment I got the exam paper back, I just became quiet. Like
that kind of feeling, I understand.
I took 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. First started rough, right? I mean, like, to be very honest, I think that was a bit ambitious of me to just come in and expect everything to roll. I'm really proud of people who are able to like roll in from the get-go.
Yeah.
And it's also a transition to a very, very different educational system.
Yeah, very different educational system.
When I came into Aquinas, Aquinas is a great school, but had a lot of like resource challenges, right?
Yeah.
And then moving to a place where it's like you're in school with people who have been taught by the best of the best and the best of labs, the best of resources available to them all year long. Like you should expect some form of like adjustment period. And that's exactly what I went through. But like I was telling you before this call, I realized that progressively, Stanford didn't get easier, but I got better.
Okay. Yeah.
There's so many things that I learned along the way that eventually made me more ready for classes. Do you get me? Like things like learning how to reach out to professors and going for office hours, right? Yeah. Something I struggled with a lot when I started the school. Time management.
Yeah, like, it's very important.
Sometimes the best students are not the most hardworking, they're the smartest. They also know how to manage their time.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you get me? Reaching out to help from like people who have taken the class and mentors, like going the extra mile, right? Not just reaching for like just passing, but like doing extra credits assignments and the rest, like developing a certain joy in the learning process, finding a community of people to learn with, right? All of these are things that I picked up along the way that eventually fueled my ability to do well at a school like Stanford. Do you get me? Pre-med wise, I knew I was pre-med from day one. Okay. Even if I was bioengineering, I knew I was still pre-med. And that's the thing a lot of people don't understand. To be pre-med doesn't mean you've committed to a specific major.
Yeah, definitely.
To be pre-med is exactly what it means, pre-medicine. That means you have medical school in mind, which means regardless of the major you eventually do, the classes that will qualify you to apply to medical schools, you are taking them. Do you get me? So even though I was interested in bioengineering then, I knew like, medicine was something I wanted to explore. Yeah. And how I knew it's like a different ball game. But I think that sort of like knowledge is necessary for medical school. Yeah. My apologies. And that's why I tell people, if you're not sure, explore. Because med school is something you want to start halfway in, right? Yeah. You won't survive. Yeah. No offense, right? But it's very tasking. Yeah. Physically, emotionally, intellectually, right? Yeah. It will demand a lot of you. So if your heart is not already there, and I'm not saying by heart is already, people always misconstrue that to mean, oh, you're always excited about medicine. No. Yeah. Medicine has a lot of things to be angry at. Medicine has a lot of things to challenge and to frustrate you. The number of times I've questioned, God, is this what you want me to do? Am I capable of this? You would be sure. Right? One of the things that I'm realizing, especially now that I'm done with my clinical rotations, is this profession combines all of the other things I want to do with my life into one field, right? I want to be a teacher. I want to be able to teach medical students, but also my patients, right? How to live life healthy. I want to be an advocate. I want to be an advocate for people's access to health care, like my grandfather needed, on a policy level, so that systemic governmental like structures and institutions will be able to provide the quality of healthcare people deserve. You get me thinking about funding of healthcare systems. With Africa, like a lot of the things is like dependent on aid, right? I'm moving from like an aid-funded system to one where it's like sustainable. Do you get me? So there's so many other things that I want to do aside that very joy of like, clinical reasoning, patient care, like direct interactions in the hospital. Because I think it's also crucial for the medical school journey. Do you get me? So early on at Stanford, like there were a few things I wanted to like explore, research and the rest. And a lot of the mentors I met along my way were themselves medical doctors.
Okay.
Not all of them were like full-time practices. Some people were doing like more like full-time research. Some people were into industry. Some people were doing a lot of like just global health research. It's something I'm really glad I benefited from. But from speaking to them and from learning them, like my joy for the profession increased, right? But also in medical school, my joy for like other things like improving education access for low-income students was also like burgeoning, right? I'd come to Ghana twice over the summer to start programs like health enrichment programs, STEM enrichment programs for high school students called Innovate Ghana and stuff like that. And so it's like all of these things, I realized that, education is just something that God has called me into, right? So how to marry them was a difficulty for me. And that's why when I graduated from Stanford, I always knew that medical school would come, but I was like, when? Yeah. Which is another thing I always advise people, like, that whole thing of like right after this, and I'm going to that after this, I'm going to that, going to this. It's not very mature, right? If that's what you want to do, go for it. But don't do it because you feel you have to. No. You're a human being, you will live 80, 90 years if God blesses you on this earth. I mean, more than that even, right? In these first 2 to 3 decades of your life, you want to make sure you're being intentional about how you are forging these formative experiences. You get me? So for me, I don't mind pausing on something if it means that the other things I'm going to explore is also going to build me up. So after Stanford, like against a lot of listen, I came to Ghana. I came to Ghana to work on Fleet Ghana. Oh, and that was by far one of the most impactful years of my life.
That's interesting.
I think for me, after living outside of Ghana for a couple of years, that return back home was really crucial in helping me, like, reintegrate with like systems back home, like politics and like the real experiences of students. Because sometimes if you don't take it, like you become out of touch. That's when we have a lot of Ghanaians in the diaspora who is like, comfortable life, living, like no touch back home. But for me, I'm so glad I got to reconnect with my high school friend, got to really fall in love with the country again, and got to be rejuvenated, right? About the things that drive me, especially in medicine, and the kind of career I want for myself. And I think that was very helpful when I was coming to medicine, because then I came to medical school with a goal of what I want out of my medical education. You get me? Like I keep telling some of my mentees, pre-med mentees specifically, in my class at Yale, we are 100 students and every student is different. First of all, we all have very different interests in medicine itself, right? I have so many classmates of ophthalmology, gynecology, primary care, even within internal medicine, infectious diseases, gastroenterology, cardiology. Like, I don't think I've met any two people who I'm like, oh, your paths are the same. You get me? And so nobody's looking to another person as competition or another person as a template for what they should do. Everybody's charting their own journeys. You get me? Right. And I think that is really crucial to be able to understand, okay, what do I want? Sometimes you will not always know before you start, but through the process, be asking yourself this question, like, this education that I'm going to, this med school, this school I'm going to, like, what am I learning about myself in this process? And listen to yourself through this process for you to be able to realign and redirect. So at Stanford, I had a lot of mentors who, from their journeys and the rest, I was able to pick up the aspects I found exciting. And I'm so glad I did. I tell people my greatest fear is waking up in the morning to do something I hate. Again, let me clarify. Sometimes you end up doing something you hate because it is part of a journey for something big. You get it? So it's a temporary measure towards, like, nobody wants to wake up at 4 a.m. when it is snowing outside to walk all the way to the hospital.
I can't.
Like, nobody wants
my hand to be burning.
That's not what I mean. But I mean that, like, after all of this, like, when it comes to a time when, like, I'm being, like, productive and I have a lot more freedom to choose, right? I want to be able to be engaged because my parents have made so many sacrifices. Like, my mom has sacrificed so much. My dad has sacrificed so much just so that their children can realize their dreams. And I intend to do that fully and to be able to make sure that, others can also do that. Because I think that's the whole point of why we're here, by living in our God-given purpose so that others can also discover themselves and who God has called them to be. Yeah, so my mentors, I was able to pick up on themselves, the things that drive them, the things that really make them excited. I was able to, this is something I'm still working on. What exactly will my career look like? Know that at every instant it will change based on the opportunities available, what God is calling you in the process and the rest, but being very intentional about pursuing that. Did I have people discourage me? Personally, you can't discourage me from something that you truly believe in. I'm just being honest with you.
Yeah.
Numbers don't scare me, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It's not because of an inflated sense of confidence in myself. It's because of a very realistic sense of confidence in who I serve.
Yeah.
Do you get me? My story, my journey has been very unlikely from day one.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So it had never been like, oh, when I was at Aquinas, if anybody had told me I would end up at Stanford, I would have laughed. One, it wasn't even in my plans. So it's not that you're coming to destroy my plans. Yeah. So I've gotten to a place where I've come to understand that, unless God tells me this is not it, I'm going to trust in Him. I'm going to put my faith in Him. I always tell people, I know the altar to which I am. Do you get me? He has never failed me. Yeah. So when doors close for me, and again, that's not to say everything opens up for me. Yeah. When doors close for me, sometimes I sit down and ask, is this a door? Sometimes the door was meant for me and it closed, right? Yeah. Sometimes I question, I ask, well, was I being obedient? Was I really listening to your path for me? God, what's truly what you're trying to teach me? Yeah. And sometimes I realized that, there's so many doors that close for me, in my life, and constantly. I applied for this master's program recently, and I got waitlisted, right? And I was so disappointed for a while. But after some time now, I realized that my plan B is actually a lot more exciting now that I think about it. I realized that my motivation for the plan A were not all that true and genuine. But for plan B, I'm really excited about that. And the more I talk to people about it, the more people are fueling into it. And I realized that, no, God, you always wanted me to do this. I was just so hung up on this that I didn't see that you were actually calling me to this. So I'm glad you closed this door so I can really focus on that. You get me? So when people used to say that, oh, med school, blah, 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 it's 0.0000 whatever percentage, I was like, okay. Well, I'll be part of that 0.0000%. So far as it is there, we can be part. And I have so many mentors who also made me believe that was possible, which is something I'm grateful for.
Yeah, that's great. And so before we move on, I want to know which area of medicine do you intend, are you interested in? Let me put it that way.
I'm interested in a number of things, which is one of the things I'm realizing from even my med school professors. Nobody is doing just one thing, which is great, right? In terms of actual practice, right now, I hope to become a cardiologist.
Okay.
And so that means I'll do internal medicine residency for 3 years, and I'll do my cardiology fellowship for 2 years. But I'm very interested in global health work too.
Okay.
So I'm interested in preventative cardiology, and one of the things that I'm working on is a large-scale project in Ghana, working with different Ghanaian medical students in areas, right? It's still under wraps, so I can't share any details. But it's very early on, it's trying to figure out, okay, what aspects of this am I even interested in? Cardiology is huge. There's interventional cardiology, diagnostic cardiology, electrocardiology, preventative cardiology, outcomes cardiology. Which one am I interested in? And I'm interested in what I think is relevant for why I want to do medicine, right?
Yeah.
I'm still very much a part of that camp. Let's go and fix that crew. Do you get me? I think God has placed us here for a reason. Do you get me? And you don't need to be physically in Ghana to change things in Ghana.
To change Ghana.
We live in a globalized world. I know so many friends who are doing little projects here, little this there. And they're not always starting a new thing, but they're full and they're funding. They're bringing ideas together. They're innovating. Do you get me? I definitely want to champion that with my career too. And I found that, God placed me at the right place for it because Yale has a great global health program with a lot of mentors who work in Ghana. And so through those channels that have already been laid down, I could funnel my way back into the Ghanaian healthcare systems and also establish my network, start building up these ideas as I want to, and the rest. And I'm also interested in politics. You get me? I think a big part of what we want to do is also changing the minds, the impact on a larger national scale. Definitely. And by politics, I'm not saying bipartisan politics. I'm not going to be running for MPP, NDC, and yeah. But politics has to do with thinking of power and in some cases, decentralizing power from centralized stores.
Yeah.
And I think everybody should understand, if we are to fold our arms and hope that the leaders who arise from someone switch the ball one of these days, I think then we're really heading for doom. Do you get me? So start thinking of in what ways are we also preparing ourselves to be fully engaging with matters of national interest and concern, and as much as we want to change things in our small niche as well. Yeah, so cardiology, global health, Ghanaian politics, and obviously my interest in influencing educational systems, teaching, creating education access, and all of that. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Thank you so much for that. That's such an interesting answer. I am enjoying the meeting. Are you not enjoying it? It's very great to be learning. I'm learning a lot, and and I hope other people who are going to watch this will also learn a lot from it. And so, I've heard many people say, medical school in the US, you don't get scholarship for it. For international students, I told them it's a lie, and all that. And so I want to hear from you, from your perspective. What do you think international students should do to be able to get into medical schools in the US with scholarships, like possibly full scholarships, to be able to support them? And so I think this is a great fear for a lot of students who want to come here to the US to read medicine, because they are like, after 4 years, who is going to fund my medical school degree? Who's going to fund my so and so? And so I think it's be very interesting that you talk about that one too, so that others can know and see the light, because you've seen the light.
Are there reasons to be concerned? Obviously, or the concerns won't exist. I remember when I was in undergrad, whenever somebody mentions med school and funding, my heart will just skip a beat, and I just right. So it's obviously something that people should be thinking about. Do you mean? One of the things that I got to learn early is, are there funding for international schools? Absolutely yes. I can give you an example. When I was applying to medical school, I applied with 2 other Ghanaian brothers of mine. They were all international students in the US. Do you get me? One of them went to Elham University. The other went to Armhest College. And I went to Stanford, and we all applied. And we all ended up going to medical school free of charge.
Okay. Congratulations.
So, thank you. And so, does the funding exist? Yes. When I was applying to medical school, one of my mentors, Dennis Nyanyo, and Papa Kwesi Morgan, Asiedu, and Muzamil and Kelechi. I had so many mentors, right? Muzamil and Kelechi are Nigerian international students in the US, and Papa Kwesi and Papa Kwe.
Sorry. The Papa names normally disturb. You don't know which one is which.
Is it Papa Kwe or Papa Kwesi? Oh my God. But Morgan Asiri is his last name. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Papa. I'm so sorry. I want to call you Papa, so I forgot what the other key is. But Papa and Dennis were also my mentors here. And just before I was applied, I'm just so glad, because for a very long time, I wasn't hearing of Ghanaians who were applying to med school. The only mentor I had before that was Samuel Aqua, right? Who had gone to MIT some years ago, was at UPenn Medical School, was even about to start his residency, right? So I knew of someone, but there was a large gap without seeing anybody going to medical school. God being so good, they literally just when I was about to start studying for my MCAT, my friend Isaac Kontoma sent me the news that Dennis had gotten into Harvard.
Oh, congratulations.
On full, right? So immediately I was like, okay, I need to talk to this boy. So message Dennis. I'm like, hi Dennis, you don't know me, but my name is Brian. We've been friends on this platform for a while. I would really love the chance to speak with you.
Okay.
And that's exactly what I tell people. Right? Yeah. So on the call, I spoke to Dennis. Dennis was God sent. If I tell you that, it's like God had opened his door just at the right time so that he could be instrumental in my own door opening.
Definitely. It happens to a lot of people.
This will be well with you. The way you poured into my journey, God will also continue to pour for you.
Amen.
So yeah, Dennis had just gotten into Harvard, had shattered the glass ceiling, right? In some ways. And so I felt very confident. And so I developed a relationship with Dennis. He literally held my hand throughout everything. Studying for the MCAR, writing my essay, preparing for interviews, even selecting schools. Even till now, as I'm preparing to take my US MLE exams, he's still crucial and instrumental. Do you get me? And so Dennis was really helpful in me getting there. But what they also did for me, seeing Dennis and Papa is at UPenn Medical School, one of the top. Dennis is at Harvard, also one of the top, right? Seeing those two Ghanaian international students in those schools made it feel very possible for me to. Do you get me? One of the things that I learned from Dennis and Papa too is the journey is tough. So you need to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Do you get me? Getting into medical schools and international students is tough on its own because only a few international medical schools accept international students.
Yeah.
I can give you the list.
Yeah.
Getting into a medical school that will give you money is tough. Getting into a medical school that will give you full funding.
It's tough.
It's tough.
Wherever there's money, there's
exactly. And so for me, I'll think, okay, I know it, right? If I get this percentile and above on my MCAT, I'm in this very small group of students. Do you get me? If with my GPA, if I get this as well, I'm in this small group with all of my activities, which I'm grateful for Stanford for. It's at Stanford, I really immersed myself in the community. So I had a rich portfolio of leadership, exploration, a bunch of research experiences, clinical experiences, international experiences. That just made me the kind of candidate that every school would at least be interested in hearing from. Yeah. You get me? So as I say, it's not all about how many papers you're able to publish, or just build yourself up.
And tell
I was telling my best friend, there's so many things that I did at Stanford that I only was able to connect the dots after I was done with Stanford. Do you get me? There's so many things that I had to be you're a pre-med, why are you doing this? And those are the things that made me excited. Even writing a play, and directing one, right? That art of storytelling, and that of making people excited. It's something that I've also realized is a gift that God has given me that I need to develop. We are not, static creatures with just one gift, right? We're complex beings with a plethora of, talents and skills, and to whom much is given, much is expected. So the Holy Spirit and God will expect that we're able to develop all of those and to use those for His glory, for men to see and give Him glory. Do you get me? And so for me, I was it's not because I want to go into medical school that I'm coming to be fold my arms and just read. No, I want to become a doctor who is able to talk about theater with my patient and to talk about, travel, to talk about leadership, build yourself up. Because another thing people forget to is medical schools, they use these grades and the rest, and a lot of times they just know whose application to read. Yeah. Right. Aside that, you don't want to know who are you, what kind of students are you, what kind of person are you, what kind of community player are you, team player. Do you get me? Because everybody wants to have a rich, diverse campus. Yeah. Do you get me? So those were things that I thought were really helpful. They're obviously specific things that every pre-med should be considering. I think one would be clinical exposure and clinical experiences. So find some way to be in a hospital, either through your school's free clinic, or through shadowing a doctor, or through volunteering in a hospital or a hospital-like setting. I think another thing too is research. And not everything must be lab research, right? By research, find an area of study you're excited about and delve deeply into it in such a way that you can produce something that is contributing to the scientific or the academic community. Do you get me? And for international students, I also think international health experiences are also really a plus for you. Because a lot of time when they're accepting you with a perception that you are going to add a different, nuanced voice into conversation, bringing a new perspective that your classmates can take, lead initiatives that American students will not always be, but the best at leading and stuff like that, right? Which I think was really helpful in the work that I have been able to do here at Yale and the rest. And strong leadership experiences that do not necessarily have to be medically inclined. So those are things that, extracurricular wise will build you up. For the MCAT, you want to be above the 90th percentile. Do you get me? Or in some cases, 95th percentile. Do you understand? So like you are showing yourself that, oh, on books, I can do it. Do you get me? I have friends who took their MCAT multiple times, but eventually we're able to get there and get into some of these top schools. Do you understand? Failure is not always a sign that you are bad.
Yeah.
In fact, in most cases, it isn't, right? But it's a sign that something is wrong and you should fix. And also, times with the right mentorship and guidance, going back to the drawing board, bro, it's not the number of times that we have failed. Every time that, like, people like, oh, right, you are this, you are that, and I'm like, you really don't know me. You really don't know. There are times like at Stanford, there's a class of organic chemistry that broke me. We're not going to get into that. We're not going to get to that. Right. So it's like things like this that make you seem competitive. Do you get me? And like if you're a new first year, think about these things and reach out to people, be forceful, put yourself there, but enjoy the journey. Because that's your first marker that you're doing something you want to do.
Yeah.
And then when you're done, you come back together, synthesize all of this into a strong application. Seek mentors.
Yeah.
Do you get me? I remember once I went to medical school, we started like a group of our pre-meds and we're supporting some of them through their journey. Yesterday, one of my mentees who I've known for a long time told me about his acceptances, and bro, like this boy is he has hit the jackpot, right? And seeing this happen, I'm like, we're continuing the cycle of like Ghanaian excellence here in the US, right?
Very important.
It's really, really important. And I think it's also really reassuring for others to see like, oh, this is possible. So it is possible. But if you're a lazy person, it is not possible for you.
Yeah.
You should be willing to work hard. You should be willing to put your best foot forward. You should be willing to like fall, but build up again. Like that zest should be there. And that's why I say if you're not interested in medicine, I don't think you'll survive, because that challenge does not stop when you get to medical school. In fact, medical school is like times 10. You get me? Medical school will challenge you.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that to scare anyone, right? But it's like having gone through a very difficult first year, a somewhat easier but still difficult second year. A third year that when I started my third year, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be, and it happened like now that I've done it all and I'm looking, I'm like, wow, this was probably one of the best years of my life, right? And just like my art of clinical, because I like talking, so please cut me short, right? One of the things I'm learning.
I want you to talk a lot if you want to. Yeah.
One of the things I like about medical school is I like to say like in the first year, you're building the alphabet. You're building the alphabet to understand the knowledge, because like in med school, amongst medical teams, and they speak in their own jargons. And you're building the like understanding of like the pathophysiology, understanding of the disease process, of the drug mechanism, of the epidemiology. Right? And when you meet the patient, now you are synthesizing all of this together to make sure that your diagnosis is unique for the patient, your treatment plan is personalized. Like that art is very rewarding. When I started this year, it was difficult. I realized that one of my preceptors, after I worked with her in my evaluations, like she gave me like A+ glowing evaluations, right? And like she gave it to me in person. She told me. So then I was like, but my clinical knowledge, like I know I wasn't the best. So that you asked me 3,000 questions, I only got 4, right? Correct, right? And she was like, Brian, you know what? I want you to understand. Medicine is an art. It's a journey. A big part of the learning is from the mistakes you're making that will build you. She was like, there's so many things I know now, not because I learned them in medical school or in residency, right? But it's because of like 15 years of seeing that over and over and over and over again. So being willing to allow the journey to also teach you is really important, right? And on my final clinical rotation, I'm on something called primary care. So because I'm at the end of my rotations, they let me see the patient on my own, right? They usually after seeing the patient, I come and present to my doctor. Sometimes the doctor and I would discuss what the plan is, and I go and see the patient. So the patient comes in, just talks to me and is discharged, and I was their doctor. Do you get me? And so now I sit there and I'm like, I know this thing.
You are good at it. It is real now.
Like it's real. Like you guys say.
Yeah.
And it's so rewarding, bro. Like I don't describe it to you like if you know something and you can use that to help somebody else.
Yeah.
it's a feeling that is really unmatched.
Yeah,
Like
I can now connect the dots from the time that you decided that you want to do medicine, and then while everything was very like in a confused state, in a like, emotion, now you are beginning to like chart the path and then beginning to see the things that you wanted to do, you are able to do them. It's very rewarding. That kind of
bro,
life
it's
is very
very
rewarding.
rewarding.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Lucio, who is my mentor from way back when, high school, told me during a meeting in 2019 was that people always think you have to go into something you love.
Yeah.
Sometimes the love comes after.
Yeah, it's true.
You get me? Like people always think, oh, I need to be absolutely in love with this if I do. A lot of time that is really a good sign. Like, if you're a soccer player and you really love the sport, it's a good time to go into it, right? But some people also end up in places as a result of circumstances. You get me? But through the process of just like becoming familiar, building expertise, getting to learn about the culture, you realize that I really love it. And that's how people are able to like learn and be in multiple professions, go into different tools and systems, right? Most recently, my parents, like both retired, went started farming. Do you get me? And my mom is a teacher, my dad was a jack of all trades, let's put it that way, right? But it's like, they're going to this, and my mom said, I'm more like, whenever I see the animals, when I'm like, I'm just full with joy. Do you get me? It's like, it's not something they ever went to school for. It's something they are in the process of doing now, but something like it's also filling them up with joy. Do you get me? So, like you said, when I started medical school, like, it's nice when everybody sees you in your white coat and be like, doctor, 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 right? But when it is tough, it's something you sit there and you're like, God, is this something you call me to do? Like, you call me to do this.
That was my last week cry. That was my I wrote that exam. I never thought of. I was like, God, should I even stop this at all?
This is something you call me to. But honestly, deep down, I always knew that this was something that I would enjoy. I knew what the barriers were. If I get proficient, I just needed to be more kind and patient with myself. And I'm beginning to like it. I'm going into this state in my journey where I just studying for my exams. And I've started studying. I started a couple of months ago. And I'm enjoying the process. I'm enjoying the process of like, now that I've seen the condition before, let's understand it to like the cell level. Do you get me?
Yeah.
Medicine is beautiful.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
It is really.
All right. So thank you so much. And what are some of the requirements for an international student applying to medical schools in the US, and also the requirement for an international student applying for an undergraduate degree in the US? So it's a two-in-one question, and I'm sending you back because we didn't talk about that.
No worries at all. So for undergrad, you have to, for most schools, you apply through like a uniform platform. The most common one is a Common App.
Yeah.
So it's like a one-stop shop where you create a portfolio of yourself, including some of your bio information, some of your extracurricular activities, and a number of essays.
Yeah.
Don't make that part of the journey at all, a number of essays. But it's also through that same platform that you would invite your teachers to submit letters of recommendation and the rest, right? So the major requirements there are now the WASI results. If you took down any exam leaving results, A levels, IB, anyone you took in your school, the results of that exam, your high school transcripts, so like a record of all your grades and your final results, a compilation of your activities. Do you get me? Your essays and your letters of recommendation. And then, you just submit that. And then you have to submit, if you apply for financial aid, submit a financial aid application for most schools separately. And then, some schools will invite you for an interview. Most schools don't. I think now a lot of like the top schools do. So like they'll invite you for an interview. And I don't think there's anything else for undergrad. If English is not your first language, you have to take the TOEFL or the IELTS to prove that for Ghanaian students who are instructed in English, usually it is like waived, so it's not required. That's for undergrad. For medical school, you need to take, I didn't include the SAT in the undergrad because now for a lot of schools, it's test optional, which means if you submit it, it's great. If you don't, who knows, maybe they'll go back to it being required. We don't know. But for a lot of schools, it's test optional. That said, a lot of people submit it anyways, so
Yeah.
you might as well just take it.
Yeah.
For
I
medical,
always think that if you don't submit it, they kind of, it's difficult to get it.
yeah, because
That's what I
think
think.
about it. If you think
Yeah.
about, like, if you are like two students, both 80s, both Stella in their school and the rest,
Yeah.
and like a school like Columbia needs to make a final decision, and one has 15-50.
Yeah.
It gives them an edge. It
Yeah.
really does. It really does. On the flip side, if you don't do it, don't submit it. For medical school, you take the medical college admission test or the MCAT.
Okay.
That's number one. Obviously, you also submit like a unified application, which includes a little bit of your activities, a number of essays, your request for letters of recommendation, and your school transcripts.
Okay.
Then, so that's what we call a primary application.
Okay.
Then after you submit that to school, and that one you pay for everything, it's expensive. After you submit that to schools, most schools would give you an invite to a secondary application. A secondary application is when you get a chance to submit the school-specific essays.
Okay.
The primary application will undergo a process of verification, which can take anywhere from a couple of days to a number of months. So the earlier you complete the primary application, so it can get into the queue for verification, the better for you. Pro tip. So lots of people you see, they've done the application already for May 1st or June 1st, whichever the date is. And on that date, they submit. Do you get me? Then for the secondary, you write the essays. Then after the secondaries, that's where you start to pray. That's where you start to pray fast. Because after the secondaries, then like a school like Harvard can get as many as 9,000 applications, and maybe we'll only give interview invites to 3,000 or like 2,000 or even fewer. A school like Yale will get like 6,000 applications and only give interview invites to 400. Right?
My God.
So the interview, that's where like another preparation you need to plan, right? In my time, we were in person. So you have different kinds of interviews. You prepare for all of them a couple of weeks leading up to the actual day. But now most of them are virtual. And after interviews, then results will start coming in.
Okay.
So that's the journey for my school application.
Okay. So what is the funding like? How do they consider you for funding in terms of the medical school application process? Do they consider you for funding like as in filling a financial aid form, or is it financial aid based or merit based something?
It's both.
Okay.
So for a school like Yale, my financial aid is like, I'll say 85% need-based and 15% merit-based. And the 15% merit-based is not from Yale. It is from a Ghanaian couple who sponsored me here at Yale.
Okay.
Do you get me? Most schools require you to take a loan as part of your financial aid packet. Okay. In fact, in a bunch of schools, it's more loan than actual free money, which is called a grant, right? At the very top schools, top 30, most of them will give you a grant, but with a loan. So you go to a school like Harvard, right? 20% of your financial aid is a loan, then the rest is a grant. At Yale, you have to take a unit loan, and then the rest is a grant. Do you get me? There's some schools that give me merit scholarships that covers everything. Like UCLA has the David Givens scholarship, it covers everything. UPenn has a specific scholarship for different groups, covers everything. WashU has one, covers everything. You understand? NYU is now free, so it covers everything. Right? So there are some specific schools that have merit-based, but for most schools, your aid package will include a grant and some loan. Now, for a school like Yale, even though you have to take a loan of $15,000, if you're able to get an outside merit scholarship, it can cover the loan, so you don't have to take it. Do you get me? Mind you, all of this I'm saying is for like the few schools that accept international students. And are willing to give international students money. Do you get me? But the thing too is like, if you have your application well, which I wouldn't say like, it's not too difficult to prepare a strong application for, you'll be competitive for a lot of these offers. You get me? So you see, like amongst the few who are able to excel, they usually get into multiples. Because like last year, one of my mentees who I was guiding through the process, like she went to Yale, she went to Harvard, but she didn't get to Harvard. She went to Yale, she went to Stanford, she went to a bunch of other schools, and she's eventually at Stanford now. You get me? So yeah, it's possible. This is how funding works.
Yeah, that's great. And so I have been someone who encouraged those in America to like support those who are in Ghana, and also not just come here and then forget about their friends in Ghana, but coming here, making it here, and trying to give back to the community in Ghana. But it's not a lot of people that are, how will I even put it, are threading along that path or that want to do that. And so I know you are a kind of person that is very interested in that. Your FLIP program has been very beneficial to a lot of people. And so I want you to talk about what students here should do to be able to contribute to their country, not just coming here and then forgetting about your country, but coming here and then understanding the system here and also impacting their friends back in Ghana or impacting their friends back at home. Because I want us to get to a point that Ghana will grow and the new generation will understand the importance of like being a very important citizen in the country and contributing their quota to the development of the country. You living in Ghana doesn't mean that you have to focus on the new country that you are in. No matter what, you are still a Ghanaian. No matter what, you have siblings. No matter what, you have friends. Should you come to America and forget about your friends? Should you come to America and forget about your country that has built you up to become who you are? How can we make Ghana a better place? How can we become the best country that you want to become? And what is your take on that? Yeah.
A few things.
Yeah.
One, I just want to start with the premise, right? Because I don't want us to also feel the narrative that the only people who can make change in Ghana are people who come to America.
Yeah.
So start with the premise that there are lots of Ghanaians who don't need to leave Ghana to do
Yeah, definitely.
given our current economic circumstances and the rest, right?
Yeah, it's very
beg to differ.
Yeah.
But I just want to I don't want us to go into that mantra that
you are right. You are right. I also
fall
believe
into the danger of that sort of Ghanaian savior complex, right? I'm the one who came to America. I'm the one who's supposed to lead change. It's not necessarily the truth. That's one. The second thing that I also want us to champion is people don't necessarily need to move back home to change things back home.
Definitely.
Like I was saying, for a lot of people, they have no desire to go back home to Ghana.
Yeah.
And it's I'm not the one to come, and that's up to you and the reasons why you don't want to move back home, which are very diverse. So I'm not going to guilt trip anybody into being like, oh, you came to America. No. I don't think that's productive. Right. But what I'm saying is that, if you want to change something back home, there's never been a better time to do that now. You get me? When economic crisis, there's a lot of things do not work right. And I think at Ghanaian we also have a complaining culture where it's everybody knows how to diagnose the problem. Very few people are willing to give a solution, right? I think for me, because of my medical training, I'm thinking of both the problem and the solution at the same time. Do you get me? And so I'm very much solution driven. So what can we actually do? Let me use a few case examples, right? So the Rwandan government, a couple of years back, invited a team of American educators to establish a program in Rwanda called Bridge to Rwanda. Do you understand? And the idea, Paul Kagame's idea was, he wanted to build a resource talent pool of experts, right? Who can use their technical knowledge to develop their countries. They did that twofold. One, funding the channel for them to get access to the best classrooms in the world and the best resources to learn these skills, and creating a pipeline for that talent to want to move back home.
Yeah.
If somebody has moved from abject poverty in Ghana, where there's no governmental support for them, basically come to America is the biggest miracle that ever happened to them.
Yeah.
Me included, right? And then the person has made it saying, I tell the person, go and move back home to go and do this thing. It's understandable that the person will be you're not serious.
Yeah, it's true.
Right. And so sometimes the onus is on creating the government and the rest to create the opportunities and the environment for people to want to move back home. Yeah. We've seen so many governments who have been able to do that successfully. I mean, Rwanda, I wouldn't say it's a stellar example, but they've been able to achieve that to some extent. Yeah. Do you get me? Competitive markets, that's sort of like big PR campaign, making Rwanda seem like a safe enough space where you want to build up families and whatnot, right? So you see a lot of people like don't see it as so out of the norm to want to move back up. Unfortunately, if you ask a Ghanaian and tell them, oh, I want to go back to Ghana when I'm done, they'll be like, what's wrong with you, right? And sometimes it's a reflection of the circumstances and the out of control of ordinary individuals' hands that have led to that reality. But even with that, we've seen examples of like people who have been able to make it work and make it work big time. Like if you think across the African continent, I like watching the stories of Maya and the rest, right, who travels around the continent, speaking to different like investors, most of whom move back home, investing in agriculture, investing in technology, investing in like different opportunities, right? One of my Stanford classmates say, come back with your greed, don't come back with your aid. Right? I mean, this is a bit extreme, but the idea is the opportunities to make money do exist on the continent. Do you get me?
Definitely.
I mean, not all of them are immoral in the sense of like you're banking on the poor, but sometimes it's just like there's a clear opportunity for real investment that could lead to real good, create jobs.
Definitely.
Circumstances, right? So I'm thinking like, think about these things. Do you get me? If there's a social problem that you want to address, think about ways in which you want to get your hands dirty. Do you get me? Because like really, that's why I say to some extent, every Ghanaian should be a politician. Do you understand? And by politics, I'm also thinking about like, dealing with issues of like power, not only like, leadership powers and this, but like taking things into your own hands and wanting to make the change and driving that thing really here. And I think, for those in the US who are able to make it here, you're in a unique opportunity to do that more than somebody who is anywhere else in the world. Do you get it? Because America's capital market and the pay here, it usually tends to be much better than anywhere else in the world, right? And to use that new opportunities to think about ways in which you also want to invest back home and create things that improve the lives of the ordinary Ghanaian. Do you get me? I think even simple things like staying abreast of what is happening in Ghana. Do you get me? And then making sure that like, you're updated, making sure that you're contributing in some way to the national conversation, making sure that you're putting your money where your mouth is, your time and your resources, and the rest. Sometimes it's just a thing of like, I have so many friends working with like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, these big financial institutions and whatnot. A lot of what they do is problem solving, problem brainstorming, and like problem fixing. You get me? I'm like, you're building all of this talent and resources, right? Africa is a mountain full of problems. You get me? It's going to be an opportunity to apply some of those skills there within a different context, but also feel that stuff there too. So, the general sentiment would be, think, invest in where you're interested in, but home is home, Charlie.
Yeah, home is home. I would definitely go back home from here. For me personally, that's what I want to do. And yes, to add to that, just what you just said. Normally, I always tell my mentees that one thing that you can do as someone who wants to become the person who can cause change in society is to have a problem identifying mindset and the problem solving mindset. And so you are working with that mindset that there are a lot of problems around you that you want to identify. It is only when you put that in mind that you want to identify a problem that your problem identifying mind or eye will open, then you are finding problems each and every day. You walk around, and then because you have that consciousness. And so when you have that kind of mindset, problem identifying mindset, you would kind of have the problem solving mindset that would kind of be thinking about ways that you can contribute to solving this problem in society. I would say that most people, the richest people in this world, are not doing anything but finding solutions to problems. People want to connect to their friends from like different continents. So they bought Facebook and people are patronizing it. And so once you are able to find a solution to a long-lasting problem of humanity patronizes that solution. And then you become who you want to be. contributing your quota to the development of the world, and that will benefit you as a person, benefit your generations to come. You become rich, you want to be, because everyone wants to become rich. And so I tell my mentees that have a problem identifying mindset, have a problem solving mindset. And then that is just what you just confirmed, and I'm very happy you also confirmed that. And so what is for the final question also, unless you want to answer or tell us more.
This should be the final question. I need to go to bed.
Yeah. What is the advice you give to the current? I can see a large influx of Ghanaians coming to school in America as an undergrads who are coming to school in Stanford, Yale, Harvard, Cornell. This year, a lot of them are coming because a lot of them are getting into schools. And so I want you to, as someone who has been there before, as someone who has gone through this process, who has gone through the thick and thin of everything that has to do with college application, college, and everything, what is your advice to them? What do you think they should be doing? What are some of the mistakes you made that you would advise them to prepare for, or even not to make those same mistakes?
The first thing I would say, the Bible says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
You
get me? And that's, we should seek first the kingdom of God, and every other thing will be added unto it.
Yeah.
Going to Stanford is not a guarantee of success. Going to Harvard, going to Yale, going to Princeton does not necessarily mean you would make it. Working at Google, working at Facebook, working at JP Morgan does not mean you have made it.
Definitely.
In fact, I know so many people working there who are living lives without purpose, and they are not happy about their life. Do you get me? In everything, you want to seek what your purpose is, what is God calling you to, because it is only there that you derive true satisfaction with what you're doing. Do you get me? And also allow truly that sort of intimate relationship with God to shape who you are. Because coming to college is a time for also finding who you are as a person. Your identity will be questioned, your mindset will be questioned, the way you're interacting with the world will be questioned, will be challenged to some extent, right? And through that process, it can be a good time for you to introspect and to find out who you are, who God thinks you are. So that's one. And that's my first advice. Pray. Everything, seek the counsel of God first. For people who are coming to college, congratulations. I'm so excited for you. Right? But your first book before any other thing should be your Bible. The gospel of Christ that liberates and saves man. For me, I would say, biggest advice. Secondly, I would say college is challenging. Don't be afraid of hard work. Don't be afraid to push yourself. Do you get me? The fact that things are not going on well does not mean you're not meant to be there. Do you get me? A lot of times, actually, that's exactly where you're supposed to be. Do you get me? I think we're in a culture that's romanticizes, soft life and
soft life.
No, the thing is, I'm a medical doctor in training. I definitely think about well-being, especially with regards to mental health and self-care. And that's the thing a lot of Ghanaians don't know how to do too. You get some people, everything, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you just need to relax. You get me? But I think there's also this unnecessary laziness. Do you get me? That sometimes prevent people from really realizing their full talent. Do you get me? College will be tough. College will challenge you. You can rise up to the challenge. Do you get me? Unless it's prohibitively, where to a point where it's actually this is toxic. Where then you need to take a step back and maybe reevaluate. Do I need to be in this environment? But I would say don't be afraid of putting in the hard work. Don't be afraid of challenging yourself, right? You will cry, you will whine, but keep going. Do you get me? The third thing I would say too is learn how to learn smart. Learn how to learn smart, learn how to know the humility to ask for help, knowing when to study and ask, learning these other things that is not opening up a book, right? Also realize what kind of learner am I, what kind of resources work for me, what kind of opportunities are available to me. American colleges do a good job of providing those plethora of options. Take advantage of them. I'll say the fourth is listen to yourself. You get me? You're going to grow a lot through this period. Do you understand? If you came to college and you live the same way you came, you've wasted your time. Do you understand? Use this time to listen to yourself. Ask yourself, what am I doing? Something I enjoy, something I love. Does it bring me purpose, right? Question, talk to yourself a lot of times too. Do you get me? Sometimes it's a good time to reassess and to rethink and to rediscover. You get me? And then I'll say the final thing too is have fun. Make lifelong friends.
Yeah.
Do you get me? It's not every day seriousness. Sometimes it's relaxation. Do you get me? College is the time to really just like be a person. Because when adulting hits. Do you understand? So yeah, just immerse yourself in the process. Don't be afraid to take risks. Fall in love, fall out of love, do all of it. Do you get me? But just really enjoy the process. Do you get me?
Thank you so much for that. I'm really, really grateful. We appreciate you. Thank you for all that you do. For some of my friends are flipped scholars, and I'm very happy you've been there for them. You've been doing all that for them. I'm very happy for all that you do for people, and we appreciate you once again. And then the final thing, what do you say?
I said thank you too for all that you do, because we know what you've been doing too, bro.
What did
Everything that you have said about me, I know you are doing 2 times more. So don't.
No. All right. And so the last thing I'll say is not a question to you. I'm just adding this. And so many people think that the only place you can make it is America. The only places that you can go to school and then get a good job is America. But that's not true. And so I had friends, I completed KNUST undergraduate, and I had friends who also completed KNUST with me. And some of them are doing really well, especially those in computer engineering. They are doing this, like a lot of remote jobs that is paying them really well. And a lot of them are working in big companies outside the country. Some of even these KNUST students are getting internships in Goldman Sachs and a whole lot. And so one thing that I would tell people who are like thinking that it is just about coming to America that you can succeed is that anywhere you are, there can be success. It depends on you. It depends on the mindset you have. It depends on whether you are paying attention to acquiring the skills that you need. If you have the skills, no one is going to deny you a job. If there is something that we are looking for someone to do for our company or for a particular company, and then you have the right person who can do that, who hire you. People are looking for people who are skilled, who have the skill set to be able to cause change in their workplaces. And then no matter where you are, just push yourself harder, work very hard, and achieve the goals you want to achieve. You can make it anywhere. I have friends who are doing very great, who completed KNUST. They've not stepped foot in America before, and they are doing really well. And I want to advise all of you to just pay attention to the skills, make friends, like be nice to everyone, like how Brian is nice to everyone, and then try and then cause change in your society. I thank you so much for making it to this meeting, and I'm very grateful that you took time off your busy schedule just to be here to talk to us. I'm really grateful. I've learned a lot, and then it's been nice talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. I hope you have a wonderful night.
Yeah, thank you. So you can stop the meeting. You can stop the recording. I'll talk to you after the recording before you go.